Thank you, Susie. That was lovely. Thank you so much. I can't tell you how happy I am to be here for lots of reasons. First of all, yes, I live in New York now. I know that's the strange part of the country, and believe me, it is. But I grew up in Pensacola, Florida, so my entire family talks like this. And my husband says after one glass of wine, so do I. And there's still a lot of folks still there. I went to school at Birmingham Southern College, lived in the French Quarter of New Orleans, did graduate school at the University of Tennessee. And then the first Rogers in 9 generations moved north of the Mason-Dixon line, so I'm the black sheep, but my roots are here. And I got to tell you something, I was so excited when I started getting to learn more about this company, and I won a blue shirt. I didn't realize we were supposed to wear our blue shirts today, because the stuff that's going to come about with Customer-Inspired 2.0 is exactly the kind of thing that Don Peppers and I have been writing about and working on and building with companies around the world since 1993, when we wrote our first book, which did not mention the phrase World Wide Web, because way back in 1993, there wasn't one yet. That's how fast all the changes have come. And when I look at a company that's really doing the kinds of things that you folks are embracing, I realize how smart it is. You know why? Because there are companies that are very successful that don't have any products. Think about it. You can have a successful business without any products. Not this company, but other companies. But there's no such thing as a successful company that doesn't have customers. Because customers are the only source of revenue that we have by definition. And therefore, you know, if you don't have customers, you have a hobby. I mean, that's just how it goes. So when we think in terms of this customer inspiration, we couldn't agree with it more. You know, when we think about, I need a clicker, don't I? So it's really, is this it right here? Because I'm sure I'll have something to say. I can hardly wait to see what I'm going to say next. Hey, do you have Uber here in Jackson? Yeah, and isn't it wonderful? Isn't it just about, how many of you have Uber and actually have used it and all that stuff? Well, yeah, and in New York, I got to tell you something. In 2012, there were no yellow cabs from 4:30 to 5:30 because unlike the opposite of customer inspiration is yellow taxis in New York, because they would go home to New Jersey and switch out drivers between 4:30 and 5:30. Can you think of any reason that anybody in New York might need a cab at about that time of day? I'm just asking. But that doesn't matter because there just weren't any, that's all. So the drivers paid $200 a day for the right to use the cabs, and the medallions that allowed a cab to be on the street, it's just a little piece of metal, but it goes on the hood. And that cost about, the price kept going up, and it cost about $1.2 million each. People were buying them for speculation. Now let's fast forward to last year and how dramatically changed everything was. The Ubers are now available 24/7. Take that, 4:30 to 5:30. And the demand goes up, then the supply goes up. So you get that surge pricing, but by golly, at least you can get something, right? The Uber drivers own their own cars, they manage their own hours, they don't have to drive for 12 hours a day the way the taxi drivers did. And the ratings are two-way. This is so interesting. Not only do I get out of the car and I'm asked to rate the driver and the ride, but I know that the driver can't get his next fare until he rates me. So I'm going to be on time, I'm going to do right because I want a 5-star rating, because otherwise I'm not going to be the one that he picks up in the snow and the cold and the ice between 4:30 and 5:30, and I want to be that person, so I'm a better customer because of that. And then now there are more Ubers than taxis in New York City. But here's the real punchline. The taxi medallions now only cost $750,000 each, and they're dropping in price. Couldn't happen to a better group of gangsters. So we do see profound market influences when we start looking at what customers do. I raised 2 boys because I forgot to have daughters. And so we spent a lot of time with the Science Channel, and so we learned things like this. Let's imagine that you're a food source for bees. That means you are a flower, beautiful flower, that's right. So, and if you're a beautiful flower, then bees will come from about 2 miles away to just have a look at you. But they're only going to go back to their hive and tell everybody else in the hive about how great you are. They do a little waggle dance, don't ask. I'm not going to do it. But they'd go back to their hive and do a waggle dance only if the nectar was good enough. Now, why am I telling you this story? Because way back in the 1900s, you remember way back then? Yeah. I have a niece named Molly, by the way, because I forgot to have daughters. And she says, oh, Aunt Martha. You know, way back in the 1900s, and I got it right away, so it's really funny. But so imagine that. If you, way back then, if you're a company, you can put out anything you want to say about yourself, and that's most of what people hear. But today, it doesn't matter how beautiful your colors are. It doesn't matter how great anything else is. What matters is the customer experience, because the customers all talk to each other. And what they say to each other about us is far more important than what we say about ourselves. And that will become more and more and more and more true. You know what Moore's Law is. Everybody here does. You're all technology experts. So, but Zuckerberg's Law is sort of the same thing, that every 20 years we will become 1,000 times as interconnected as we are now. It's not going to go backwards ever. You know, there are 968 million daily active users on average on Facebook. And think about this, 75% of these views on Facebook are on mobile. I mean, there were not smartphones 10 years ago yet, and we're already there. So 316 million active users daily on Twitter, sending 500 million tweets every single day. More than 60% of U.S. 13 to 34-year-olds are Snapchatters. And my hope is that you will take the lead on figuring out how to get the cars not to work when the Snapchat is on and vice versa. Because you can save a lot of lives that way, but no pressure. Okay, so, and 3 billion or more video views every single day on Snapchat. YouTube has more than 1 billion users uploading 300 hours of video every minute, so no, you will not ever catch up. There are way too many cute kitty things for us to ever see all of them. But here's the point. If you screw up today, then everybody's going to know it. Because today, the news is instant, it's everywhere, it's completely ubiquitous, and it's going to be permanent. There are not enough lawyers on this planet to get stuff off of the internet. It's there. And it's only your next good thing and your next good thing and your next good thing and your next good thing that'll bury it. But it can't ever come off. Or as a friend of mine says, you can't un-Google yourself. So there it is. Now, because technology is hurtling forward in this way, then consumers are totally informed all by themselves. Whether they literally are really, or whether they think they are, is the same thing to us, because it's the same thing to them. So they have the information they need, not from us, from somewhere else. Customers are really thinking about how to, real-time interaction with companies. They don't want to wait for, the answer to a letter or even an email. Sales, service, and marketing are radically transformed because of this in every industry, in every company. So here's an important question. How good is your customer experience? Bain & Company asked a whole bunch of executives this, top executives at big companies around the country. And the executives came back from the survey with this answer. 80% of them said that they had superior customer experience. And why shouldn't we believe that about ourselves? After all, we spend a lot of time thinking about it. We spend a lot of money working on it. We spend a lot of effort on it. I mean, of course we have superior customer service. We have a big department that manages that. So then the surveyors went out and talked to the customers and asked them, what do you think? 8% of customers of those companies believe that they had a superior customer experience. Which one of those matters? The 80% or the 8? And that's where we are. In 1996, Barnes & Noble offered to buy Amazon.com. I can just see it now. The executives from Barnes & Noble are going to take Jeff Bezos to lunch. Jeff, honey, they say, we're going to figure out how to buy you now because nobody's ever heard of the name Amazon. You've been losing money. He lost money for 28 consecutive quarters. You've been losing money, Jeff. We're going to help you out because we have this strong brand called Barnes & Noble. We're going to launch barnesandnoble.com, and you are just going to get beaten up. So since you've already got some of the technology, we'll buy that from you. Done deal. And he said, well, no, I don't think I really want to do that. And let's see how that worked out for everybody. Today, Barnes & Noble has a market cap of $846 million. That's as of last week. That's all right. Jeff, though, has a market cap of $247 billion. How many of you have ever bought anything on Amazon? Okay, I live in the Upper West Side. I have a refrigerator that I bought from Amazon because it was so much easier and I could get exactly what I wanted and it was there in 2 days. So that's it. That's what we're up against. So when we think about customer centricity, when you're thinking about putting customers at the center, the source of all revenue, right at the center of what we do, then it's always been about reaching customers and satisfying their needs. But in the old days, way back in the 1900s, way back then, it's all about developing products and services and stuff that we have and stuff we want to do, and then trying to figure out how to sell that to as many people as will buy it. We're going to find customers for the products that we have. Well, that was then. This is now. Now, instead of focusing on one product or service at a time and trying to find customers for that product, now what we do is we find a customer, and then we figure out what products and services we can find for that customer over time. So we're trying to increase not just our market share, but our share of customer. Because you know what? If we find the best customers in business and we get a greater and greater share of each one's business, then the market share takes care of itself. But the things we have to get up and do every morning to win more market share is quite different from what we have to get up and do every morning to win more share of customer. Market share, we can leave that to the marketing department. Share of customer, that requires every single person in this room and everybody that reports to every single person in this room. That requires the help and the support of every single department. So instead of just thinking about how to maximize the value that's created by every product, what we have to do from now on is really think about how to maximize the value that's created by every customer. Because if we can get this customer and another one and another one and another one, and remember that's the only source of revenue we ever have is the customers that we have now and the customers we're going to have in the future, and that's all the money we can ever make. And if our job is to get them involved with us so that they buy the most products they can from us and they're more likely to be really, really engaged with us, then that's how we maximize the value of the company. That's it. So customer centricity really does require customer inspiration. It requires customer experience that's unlike anything you can find anywhere else. And it requires connectedness. Gee, it's interesting, isn't it? We're in the connection business. And we have to be connected to each other. We have to be connected to our customers because the customers are all connected to each other. Now, when we look at this, I got to ask this. Can a customer, right now, see what he did with you on your website yesterday? Well, do you notify him as soon as new things are available just for him? Not, send out a big announcement to everybody and make him wade through it, but send out things that are just for him? Well, that's a tough answer, and most companies have to say no to this, to these kinds of things. But let me just point out something that I read not too long ago. Microsoft Kinect for Xbox has a 3D sensor that's capable of taking your pulse by looking at your skin. And if they can do that, then let me ask the question again. Can a customer see what he did with you yesterday on your website? You see? I mean, he doesn't think about those as two completely separate arenas of his life. This part can read his skin, and this part can remember or not remember what he did with the website yesterday. Those are just all part of his life. So the secret to customer experience is really getting the friction out of the way. It's really making it, get the problems out, just getting the roadblocks out. I have a friend who's a consumer consultant, and he does a lot of retailing work, and he went into, just as a customer, went into a shoe store one busy Saturday morning in Connecticut, and he wanted to buy a particular kind of running shoes because his were wearing out, and it was very busy, and so he watched the people who were waiting on everyone, the salespeople, to go to each of these people. And he watched them, and each one of them would say something like, well, yeah, I need this pair of Adidas that I'm interested in. And the guy would say, the salesperson would say, well, we have this New Balance this is really great now. And they are good shoes. And he went from one to the other, and in every case, he changed the brand that they were asking for. So when it got to be our friend's turn, he says, I'll try on the New Balance shoe. Of course, I'll try your brand. But let me ask a question. And you can tell me, because I won't tell anybody. And he said, So tell me, sir, salesperson, why are you pushing this brand? Do you have an overstock of them in the back? I'm in this business. I'm just very interested. Are they spiffing you to sell this particular brand rather than some other brand? And the answer from the salesperson came back and said, no, sir, nothing like that, of course. I always want what's best for my customers, and these are good shoes. But also, it's Saturday morning. I hate to make people wait. And this is the only brand that comes with the shoelaces already put into the shoes. Getting the roadblocks out of the way. The industry norm is don't do that. It's so much cheaper to just put them, in a little wad by the side in the box. But one company figured it out. And you know how long it would take somebody else to be able to do that same thing? To figure out how to follow that particular roadblock gone? So when we look at a company like Siemens, we did some work there over in Germany. And they hired a new marketing director and the CMO. And he comes in, and when he first starts there, he walks into the first big meeting, and he plops out a big folding chair. And he just puts a folding chair there. And then somebody said, do we need more chairs? He said, no, just like, sorry, you can't sit there. No. And as soon as he started the meeting, he said, this is our customer's chair. Don't say anything in this meeting that you wouldn't say in front of a customer. And he has gotten that now throughout the entire company. It happens in finance, happens in IT, happens everywhere in the company. The customer is sitting there. You know what? You don't use the same language if you've got the customer in the room. You don't talk about customers the same way if the customer is actually sitting there. And that's the way that he's doing things. So he's called Der Mann mit Klappstuhl, or the man with the folding chair. And that folding chair now follows everybody around Siemens. Here's what emerging technology, this constant emerging technology and the Internet of Things requires of all of us. It means that we have to build and maintain a reputation for really great customer experience. That's what the technology requires of us. And the telecom sector, though, Martha, we're a little different, aren't we? I mean, yeah, this is true of everybody, but is it up to us to educate consumers and customers, business customers as well? Shouldn't customers learn as much as they can and then evaluate us, and they'll see that we're better? Well, let me ask a question. Hugh asked it, and I loved listening to this. Which one is more proactive? Which one really does help our customers? Do we wait for shifts in government policies, or do we take the lead in doing the right thing? The entire industry is seen as commoditized. So for customers, it's mostly about price now, and maybe the coolest new gadget, but it's pretty much a commodity. So how do we differentiate ourselves so that we can be the go-to guys? And how does that help us? Wait, wrong question. How does that help our customers? How does it help our customers to do the things that differentiate us to become the go-to guys? How does it help our customers to do that? Customers are skeptical. They're skeptical of everything, including whose side are we on anyway? They've heard too many stories about too many companies that are looking out for themselves. So the opportunity we have and the challenge that we have is that we want deeper relationships with customers. And what becomes our primary differentiator? Is it the phones or the lines or the cloud or we want to be good at all that. We have to be at least as good at all that. We have to get better at the process. We have to get better at the backroom process. We have to get good at all of that. What is it that differentiates us once all that stuff is at least as good as everybody else? Well, let's think about this for a second. A company named Megafood, I had a chance to meet them. They're a very interesting company. They're outside Boston. And they are all about fresh foods, and they do supplements, healthy supplements for people to take every day. And there was a lot of bad press in the last couple of years about how the supplements company is doing some terrible things. There was this horrible example, of a company that didn't mean to do a bad thing, but they made low testosterone medicine, so head full of testosterone. And they ran it on the line, and then they didn't clean it off quite enough, and then they made children's probiotics on the same line. And so children were sprouting mustaches and stuff like that. So, yeah, so bad news. But so what Megafoods did was they just basically went to be as transparent as they possibly could. There were these stories about rats running around the supplements business and all that. And they said, you know what? Customers, come in, see everything. They put cameras up all over their production lines, including at floor level so you can check for rats. And they just, you can look in there anytime. Go to their website. They're there right now. You can look at any room, any place. You can see people just doing their stuff, trying to make these products and make them well, trying to do what's right for customers. So just check it out. That's really about the real transparency. So what did they do? Well, first of all, even though they'd won a bunch of awards for being terrific, they decided to start all over, go back to scratch, and really think about how to do the very best thing they could for customers. They stopped comparing themselves to others in the natural foods business and instead started looking at best in class across all industries, because customers compare what Amazon is doing when they go on their healthcare website. And they don't understand why this one's not as easy to use as that one. They don't care that it's a different industry. They don't think that way. So that's one of the things they did. They also created a culture of customer first, is what they called it. And they created a very superior digital experience, website. They gave customers more decision-making power. And they became very transparent, both B2B and B2C. And they were very much about the frictionless customer experience, taking all the obstacles out of the way. I guess they started putting shoelaces into their supplements, into the pills. I don't know. But the point is this: how do you make sure? How do you make sure that your team believes that we really care about customer experience? How does that happen? Well, the new technology, I got to tell you something, I'm pretty happy about the fact that new technology really mandates old values. You know, my grandma Martha, I think I mentioned this to somebody this morning, but my grandma Martha was about this big. Her name was Martha Ann, and that meant my name was Martha Ann. And even though she was only this tall, she was big Martha Ann. I was little Martha Ann. And she had her own Sunday school class at Eastville Baptist Church in Pensacola, Florida. And she had 200 people who came to that class every Sunday morning. And I think that she's gone now, but I think she's probably watching, and she's probably telling us that being trustworthy is not enough. I think she'd be pretty happy at how much that new technology requires this. It's not just that we can be trustworthy, because that's no longer enough. Brand trust is not enough. You can measure that pretty easily, but it's sort of akin to a Facebook like. When we think about relationships with customers based on trustability, now we're talking about something else. We're talking about becoming the unquestioned brand and the go-to provider, and it helps us recover from our inevitable errors and lost trust. It means that when we make a mistake, it's okay. It'll be okay. They'll give us a pass. If they trust us, usually to do it right and to look out for their best interests always. The point is this: we want to learn how to improve the bottom line while providing better, unassailable preference and referrals and ratings. That's what's really important. Because if customers trust you, this is what our research shows, years of it, and they believe that you will understand their point of view. They believe that you will figure out what's it like to be our customer and what should it be like, and spend genuine time and effort closing up that gap all day, every day. That's what we do. We close the gap between what is it like to be our customer and what should it be like. If customers trust you, they believe you are worth more to them. That's key. Because it's important that we make the world safe for customers, but we want to do that while we're making the world more profitable for companies too. And we can. So let's look at this. Trust sells. We did a study. It turns out that 84% of marketers in our study agreed that building customer trust will become marketing's primary objective over the next 8 years. Wow. And how much more would customers be willing to pay if they could trust the company they're doing business with? Because I think that's one of the things that matters. It's not just, do we feel good and are we doing the right thing? That's great. But can we do that to help improve our own bottom line while we're making things better for customers? So let's imagine for a moment that we have customers in the room and we start asking them some questions. We ask them, do you trust your phone company? And some of them would say yes and some of them would say no, but we don't really know what they mean and they don't know what we're asking. But if I did say, does your phone company, do they enroll you in the most cost-efficient plan for you, for your wireless service and your data and everything else and so forth? Do they sign you up for the best one of those automatically every month? Or do they advise you in advance when you're entering a roaming area in a big way so that you don't miss it and get a big surprise? remind you when your contract is up and that it's time for a new free phone for you, and based on your usage, we recommend one of these 3, but of course you can get any of the deals. Advise that you're about to subscribe from a home or business where the service is currently a little spotty, you know, and on and on and on through all our products and everything else. Now a customer has sort of been trained about what it means to trust a company. So now if we ask, do you trust the company? They can say in an informed way, yes or no. And if they say yes, then we ask a key question. And we know this for the telecommunications business. Customers in the US would be willing to pay an average of how much more to get cell and data service from a company they trust? How much more per month? Answer, $11 more nationwide. $11 more per month per customer times 12 months a year times 800,000 customers. And then the ability to do what we're talking about here not only pays for itself, but we're able to do some other pretty exciting things with what's left over. It's powerful stuff, this trust. It's powerful differentiation. And it helps customers so much, they really value it. How much more would customers pay if it's really easy to do business with us? If all the obstacles are out of the way, if they know that we're looking out for their best interests and that they matter to us as people, as Beth and as Tony, when we saw this morning. How about if we would keep track of things for them and remind them that maybe we can help in this or that way? How about if we know that the information they're getting is based on reliable research? How about if they know that it's based on reliable research and not just our ability to want to sell the next big thing? How about if they understand why we do what we do? And how about if they believe that a company cares more about their family's budget and their connectedness than about our own bottom line? Or at least not less than that. So that's powerful stuff, making it easy for the customer. Look, I'm me everywhere. And I don't think about whether it's this department or that department. If it carries the logo, then I want you all to sort of unify your efforts for me. I want you to all sort of be one company to me. Because if you're not, then I may as well start over with another company if I've got to start over whenever I deal with any one company, right? So I want you to know me. I want you to remember me. And so that brings us to this discussion of extreme trust. When we think about strong customer experiences, building journeys that are, and mapping those journeys for customers in ways that really matter, what is it that makes that work the most? We've been writing these books, writing articles, doing work on this for 25 years. And what we have been uncovering and uncovering and uncovering has brought us to the point where we realize that what underlies it all, the new technologies mandate old values. Extreme trust is about trustability. Now, we've tried to read all the books on this subject, but trust has always been about doing things right and doing the right thing, about competence and goodwill. But there's something new now, because we're in 2016 and almost 2017, there's something else, and that is that we also know that we have to do it proactively. It's the difference between me realizing that my, cable company went out on one of the nights of the World Series, and so I call the next day or even that night and say, yeah, and the cable company says, oh, so sorry, and they fix it. And then do they or do I mention that I should be credited for the time I didn't have? If I have to, they're not proactive, and I don't trust them really. I have to count my change when I do business with them. Or they do it. But if the value of things is so much higher, I can not only afford to do it, I have to do it. I have to do it. And that business of becoming more proactive requires that everything else become much better and we're much smoother with it and everything else. So when we think about trustability, it's doing things right, doing the right thing proactively. Earning trust sometimes costs us something in the short term that we'll have to sort of balance that with the long term. And if that seems difficult, then what do if our customers can choose between us and a company that they really trust? On the other hand, if they can choose between us and a company that they don't trust, then where does that leave us? Any of you members of USAA Insurance and Banking and based in San Antonio? Yeah, hands up. How many of you are second generation? Thirds? Got any third generations? Yeah, a couple. No, are you third generation? Yes, you are. Okay, and it's really interesting because USAA Insurance, you've seen their ads on TV, and they don't even talk about customers, they have members. And what happens is that they were founded to overcome the problems that military people have trying to get life insurance. That's how it started. Well, now they've branched out into other banking business and all kinds of other stuff. But they do all kinds of things that their customers love them and trust them. How many of you that are members of USAA do all of your insurance there? Exactly. How many of you have said to your kids, you're nuts if you don't get my legacy and use it? Exactly. Now, that really is a profound change. Imagine how nervous the banks were who serve a lot of military people when the USAA Insurance Company became insurance and banking. Here's the kind of thing they do. Back in the first Gulf War, when we knew how to fight a short war, back in those days, they went over, the military people went over to the Middle East, and 6 weeks later, they came back. And surprise, they got a check, unsolicited, they got a check proactively from USAA that said, we want to reimburse you for the time that you were serving your country. Thank you for that. And we know you weren't driving your car in the driveway, so here's a little reimbursement for the time when you didn't need your car insurance. Thank you for the service to your country. Now, the story doesn't end there, because that's pretty remarkable, that's pretty great. It's the right thing to do. But the people they sent these to, these are not rich people. And yet, over 2,500 of those checks came back, uncashed, with notes that said things like, thank you, USAA. Keep the money, stay strong for us, for when we need you. Wow. I'm trying to imagine myself sending back a refund check from Chase Bank. I don't think so. So how are you going to compete against a company that customers trust so much that they send back the refund checks and that they are now loyal for 3 generations and counting? And if you're saying to yourself, boy, glad we're not in the financial services or the insurance business, don't get so comfortable, because what if USAA partners with your competitors to offer your products and services to USAA's customers? Ouch! Because wouldn't keeping members connected be sort of an obvious thing for them to do next? I'm just saying. You know, when USAA has a member, they're just finding more products for that member and their children and their children. What's going to be the next product? How do we compete against that? Or how do we become that and have other people have to compete against us? That's the question. What about USAA cell phones and internet and business connections and cloud services and all the rest of it? You know, priced to keep your budget on track, selected to keep your family and your business on track. What do we do then? Trustability is a competitive differentiator. Many companies believe that they're trustworthy. And in fact, many of the people that work at companies are trustworthy. And so that's not, you know, they follow the rules, they follow the law, they follow their explicit promises. But the trustworthiness now is sort of a minimum. It's a floor that we have to walk on. It's the minimum that's required just to do business. But very few companies are truly trustable. They don't practice extreme trust. They don't treat their customers and business partners the way they'd want to be treated. You know, one thing that's true of every major religion in the world is that they have something like the golden rule that I grew up with, which is do unto others the way you'd want them to do unto you. Every major religion has something like that in it as a tenet. And trustability is that. It's a higher standard. It builds extreme trust. Trustability can be a true competitive advantage. I won't go through this whole chart, but the whole idea here is that you can be a trustworthy company if you carefully follow the rule of law, and you have HR services that make sure that we comply with that and everything. That's great. And if you do that, you pat yourself on the back. But you don't get to be trustable until you follow the golden rule. and not just the rule of law. And we look out for customers and partners and employees and everybody else the way we would want to be looked out for ourselves. And that goes on and on and on, and this little chart is in that book, so you can do the rest of it whenever you get to page, I think it's 43, but I'm not sure. But here's the point. Trustability is about doing things right, doing the right thing proactively. Do things right. That's the first part. Making sure we don't make a bunch of mistakes that make it hard for customers just to do business with us. Ever driven through a fast food and they mangled the order? So you get home and you don't have the secret sauce or you don't have something, and you call them up and you say, guys, come on. And they say, oh, so sorry, just come back and get it. Really? Really? And will you give me something for the gas and the time and why is it my job to fix your mistake? These are the things that occur to me, you may imagine. And so it occurs to more and more customers too. Why should I fix your mistake? Why should I have to be home again to have somebody come by? Why should I have to, why do I have to, if I've got somebody on the phone from the contact center and they say, well, I'm so sorry, if you'll just give me a few minutes I can get, and I say, hang on, I don't really have a few minutes. Remember, you're being paid for these few minutes. This is part of your job. I'm not being paid for these few minutes. This is in addition to my job, and I got to get back to that. So, understanding what it's like to be our customer and why it's important to do things right, that's just as important as doing the right thing. I have no doubt that C-Spire is all about doing the right thing. Not just intending to, but really doing it. So if we do things right and also do the right thing and do them both proactively, making it easier and easier for customers to do business with us and to rely on us to do the very best thing for them. That's really it. A culture of customer trust drives many leading firms, the ones who are successful year after year after year. USAA went public several years ago, and when they did, my co-author Don Peppers and I got very nervous. We had dedicated one of our books to Brigadier General Robert McDermott, who made USAA the way it is now. And we thought, man, this is really the test. Well, here's what's happened. Nothing. They're exactly the way they always have been. And you know what else? Every single quarter, they make a profit, but they never think in terms of how can we make the most profit we can this quarter. Every quarter, instead, they're thinking about how do we make a good profit this quarter, but also continue to plan for the quarter that we're going to have that's going to be profitable 5 years from now. Those are different objectives. It's a different list of things to do. So the important question is, when do we put C-Spire on this group? How do we build that in a way that really matters? Because it includes doing things right. How does trustability affect business performance? Well, customers who believe a company is trustable will be more likely to pay for certain services. They'll be more likely to give the company a greater share of customer, greater share of wallet. They'll be able to provide word-of-mouth endorsement, and I don't just mean in the mouth, I mean where it really counts digitally, to require a lower cost to serve. They're going to reduce the burden for compliance and oversight. They're going to be more likely to follow our recommendations. We've seen it. We've seen it in insurance companies. We've seen it in healthcare. We have certainly seen it in telecom. And they're also able to forgive honest company mistakes. One of the things our research has shown us is that if the mistakes that a company makes are against the goodwill, in other words, if it's something where we don't care about our customers, customers have a very hard time forgiving that. But if we occasionally, if we rarely kind of screw up a competence thing, we apologize, we make good on it, we make sure that it's not going to happen again, then they can forgive that. And they will forgive those if they trust us, especially if they trust us more than they trust anybody else. Trust makes convenience possible. Those of you who've used Amazon, anybody got any Amazon Dash items yet? Aren't they great? Oh my gosh, this is a little gadget, there's a sticker, and you put it on your refrigerator or your medicine cabinet or your washing machine or something in your house, and then when you're about to run out of something, then you just press the button and it will automatically put that item in your shopping cart. So you don't have to break away and go find your phone or walk all the way to your computer. Why should you have to do that, really? And so that being the case, then, Think what it does to the brand pieces. Think what it does to brand shares. Think what it does to all the other. There's some profound implications. Once that dash is on my refrigerator or any place else in my kitchen or my bathroom or anywhere, then I don't change brands because the convenience is worth more. Do things right matters. And they are adding hundreds of them. People love them. Convenience matters. And here's what it means. Here's what this means. Look right up here. No silos, no excuses. We got to get it right. We got to get it right every time, for every customer, everywhere, no matter what. Because that something as simple looking as an Amazon dash button, imagine all the little duck paddling that has to go on underneath to make that work, right? So customer strategy is not, some big fancy new message. It's not some, email mailing. It's not, all that stuff happens, of course, but that's not what it is. Customer strategy is about building the value of the company by building the value of the customer base, because literally we can't do it any other way. So what do we have to do to build the value of the customer base? What does a trustable telecommunications company look like? It's transparent. To the extent that we can, we tell who we are and what we know and how we're doing things and why. We tell when things go wrong. We use what we know to help customers. We use what we know to help customers choose what will be best for them and not just leave it all up to them to figure it out, because guess what? They have other parts of their lives to think about. We help customers get more at my level and with my interests and whatever I can do well. We want to be more reliable, more connectedness to more people. That's what a really trustable telecommunications company looks like. What does customer-inspired trust look like? What does a trustable C-Spire look like? What do we need to do to be even more there? I just went out for fun and grabbed this website, this URL, trustablesell.com. I'll work with you to build it out. And then I'm going to hope like crazy that you keep being so successful and you expand so much that you come to New York City and save me from Verizon and Time Warner, please. Will you do that, please? I'm going to tell you something. There are countries around the world that are doing the exact kind of stuff we're talking about. I can rhapsodize pretty well about some of them. And they are beating the socks off their competitors with it too. But in the United States, nobody yet. Nobody. You know why? They're so involved in short-term gains. They're so involved in this quarter's profits that it's very hard for them to do what we're talking about here. Now, the numbers would be pretty rewarding for them. $11 a month times 70 million customers would be a lot of money, but they can't think that way. Let me look at you and see who can and what you could do to take the leadership role in the trustable cell business. I'll give you this if you'll build it out. So, do we have good intentions? Well, that depends. Here's some, listen, I got a zillion of these questions, but let me just ask you a few. Do you have good intentions? Well, do we make more money when the customer succeeds or when we get him to buy? Think about consumers and businesses. Would we rather sell to knowledgeable and informed customers or people who are not paying attention? Because there are companies that would prefer the latter. Do our salespeople make more money by selling products or by building relationships? Are we a competent business? Do we do things right? Is the quality of our product and our service at least on a par with our competitors? Can we remember customers from interaction to interaction across all parts of the company and across multiple channels? Do we work to continuously reduce the friction in our customer experience? Do we put shoelaces in the phones? Do we base that on feedback? And are we easy to work with? Not just pleasant, I know that, but easy, really easy. And are we proactively trustable? Do we remind customers when their agreements are almost up and suggest what's in their best interest to do next? Do we keep track of what a customer gets from us and whether he likes it or not? And if he does, how to get it again without much effort on his part trying to remember it or figure out how to do it? Do we warn a customer if he's about to make a mistake? Do we warn him that he's going into a roaming zone he may not be aware of? Do we help him if he's about to buy more than he needs? You know, I buy groceries on Fresh Direct, right? I can do my whole shopping my entire grocery shopping in about 8 minutes, and then it's delivered and it's great. But one time I needed a whole bunch of lemons for something, and so I put in something, I think it was 24 lemons, and they popped up a question and said, "Did you mean to order 24? Because it could have been a mistype on my part, right? Great, thank you guys. Thanks. I did, but thanks for checking. And so if somebody measured everybody in the industry tomorrow, how would we score? How trustable are we really? Yes, we know we have goodwill toward customers, but that other piece, that competence piece, and the proactive piece, how trustable are we really? How is trustability defined? And what are its elements, and what are the examples of those elements in this company? And then we have to ask, in our company, what are some examples of actions or decisions, maybe KPIs, that demonstrate high or low trustability? What are we doing that creates or destroys trust? And based on that, how would we look on some kind of assessment? How would that compare to our competitors? How do we make it better and better compared to our competitors? And just for ourselves, because if we do this right, we'll pull away from them. And why does it matter? How does trustability help us to be more successful so that we can do more for our employees, our shareholders, and our customers? How important is trustability to customers when they decide where to do business? I saw the same video you did this morning. Wow. It matters a lot. What can we do that nobody else can do? How do we measure it? Well, we got to measure whether or not companies are transparent. We measure whether or not they do things right, do the right thing, and whether they're proactive. And in the process of doing that, we don't just look at customer perceptions. We look at employee perceptions, which tell us in many ways much more. Do you trust the company you work for, and should your customers trust the company you work for? And then the KPIs, an analysis of the measurements and the reward system, because that has a lot to say about what works and what doesn't. What fell apart at Wells Fargo was not the intention to build stronger relationships with customers by having customers have more products. It was the way they measured the success of that. They measured how many more products can you sell to a customer this year, not how much can you make sure a customer is more successful financially, and how are we helping with that, and on and on and on. Is it harder? Well, sure, but Net Promoter Score is harder than not doing it. But the difference is just huge. Let's talk about 21st century KPIs. Gee, it started with customer satisfaction, but we pretty much stopped using that in a lot of companies. Now it's Net Promoter Score. Net Promoter Score is fairly easy, it helps us, and we can all be held accountable for it because it's the right thing to do. But we also need to look at vulnerability score. How easy would it be for our customers to leave us? And why would they want to? Or why do they want to? What about a loyalty score? What about a customer dashboard where we can see various things going up and down for each customer all the time? We need to understand what their lifetime value is. I'm not just responsible for how much money we make this quarter from this customer, but that's the actual value. But I'm also going to be interested in how much money this customer is going to be worth to us over the next 3 years. That's the potential value. And so understanding that helps me know how to reward people. And then customer equity. If we build the value of the company by building the value of the customer base, then the measure of customer equity becomes important. And return on customer, which is the rise in customer equity. These are the kinds of measurements that companies are moving to when they are serious about building better customer experiences. So I'll leave you with a little inspiration from Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson, by the way, was Peppers & Rogers Group's very first client back in 1994. It was great. So we had such a good time with them. But back in 1994, remember that they were, at that time, very, very successful. They'd worked out all their their quality problems from the 70s. They just were at the top of their game, and that's when they decided to build stronger customer relationships, build the HOG program and everything else. And if we look at what they do these days, I mean, here's a guy, this is called a 2%er, by the way, because these are the 2% of Harley drivers who actually look like Harley drivers, right? I mean, really look like it all the time. And if you see what he's done there, he's put a big tattoo, a Harley-Davidson tattoo on his arm. And I think that should be a KPI. And I think that we should be looking for C-Spire to start appearing on the biceps of some of our customers. And maybe I'm just saying, I'm just suggesting it's like that. Okay, trustability can trust-proof a business, protecting it from the random swings of social sentiment. There was an article in the news this morning that said that Pepsi was in some fake news as being against Trump. And as a result, all the Trump supporters in the country are ready to boycott Pepsi. But guess what? It was fake news. It was wrong. So the question becomes now, how much can they recover from that? And how fast? Because it's not going to go away. So how much will people trust them to believe that they're not saying bad things about Trump and that they're going to be there? Customers can be tough. But the three things that they respond to is to figure out what's best for each of them and do it well and to do it proactively. Here are the 5 main points for customer inspiration. Here are the steps. Acknowledge the long-term value that customers create, not just the short-term value, but at the same time they're creating long-term value, and we build that into planning. Check. We can check that one off because I've already seen the whole inspiration stuff, right? Customer inspiration step 2, ensure a quality product or service. No silos, no excuses. Work across the silos to put that customer experience first and make sure it's working. Step 3, continuously improve IT systems, maintain up-to-date listening devices for customers, and making sure that all this stuff is running and working perfectly. The moments of trust are as important as the moments of truth. Our ability to remember customers is part of this. Customer inspiration step number 4 is to maintain robust voice of the customer feedback and to hold fire drills on what to do in case of a social media debacle. We have to know what's going to automatically help us right away and not wait till after the weekend is over or something. Customer inspiration step 5, provide stewardship for customer relationships. We need to have people in charge of all kinds of stuff. I was able to talk to a few of you this morning, and we have people in charge of all kinds of parts of this company, but whose job is it to make sure that this customer stays with us forever, this person's children stay with us forever, and that we get a greater and greater share of her business over time? Whose job is that? And the answer is it's all of us. How do we provide that stewardship? How do we engage and enable employees to make that happen? And how do we encourage a corporate culture that is based on true trustability across all the dimensions of do things right, do the right thing, be proactive? I want to close with one little story here about Toyama no Kosuri Uri. Does anybody here speak fluent Japanese? Good, then I can get away with that pronunciation, which I have no idea whether it's correct. But so there's a way of doing business then that is really very interesting. These companies put up, one of the companies does it, they put up a little medicine cabinet in your home. And when they do that, they come around every so often and they replace what you've used. And what's in there is just the stuff that every household needs from a drugstore. It's the medicines and that sort of stuff. And not the prescription medicines, just over-the-counter stuff and Band-Aids and Mercurochrome and stuff like that. And then they come around every so often and they replace what you've used. And so it works sort of like a hotel minibar, right? Now, what's interesting about this company is not that they do that, it's that they are so specialized. They're so one-to-one. They're so customer-oriented. They use a written record, which they call a daifukucho, maybe. And maybe that's how it's pronounced. And what they do is they say that it would really be a matter of, putting in your house what you need. I grew up with those boys in my house, so we needed more Band-Aids and fewer stomach upset ailments. And the Band-Aids had to have all kinds of Scooby-Doo on them and stuff like that. So that would be what we needed. Now that sounds very new. That sounds very fresh. That sounds very 21st century. But this company was started back in 1750. And they have been inside the same houses now, some of them, for over 250 years. They have had families that have been customers of theirs for generation after generation after generation. Now think about how much the products inside the cabinets have changed. It's the customers that remain the same. It's the customers that are real. And that's why we're here. I want to thank you so much. I'm watching you. I'm going to be hoping that I can see. I really want to see you do all this stuff in the United States first. that you raise the bar, you make it happen. And then in order to do that, that you make customers happier, employers happier, and I know I'll be happier. I'm just loving watching it. So take care. Thanks very much.